spirits going around the constituency. We'll come back here as soon as we are certain that he's arrived. He doesn't seem to be here for the moment.
The news is just exploding onto the screen. Charles Curran is back, I see, for Uxbridge. Brian Walden has held All Saints. Labour have held Reading. There's a recount at Bolton East. Julian, oh, that's a great surprise. Julian Emery holding Brighton Pavilion. You know, that's like saying somebody's in at Reigate. And now let's go down to Bexley and Michael Charlton, because I hear, Michael, that Mr. Heath has been watching the television, visibly brightening, it says on my piece of tape, with each Tory success. So he must be a very Brighton man indeed, mustn't he?
Yes, although he's playing it remarkably cool. I've been with him for about an hour or more myself out here in a little side room just off the drill hall. And he looks a bit more secure than the drill hall does at times, but he's played it very cool all day. And certainly, even round about midday today, he was thoroughly relaxed, I thought, down here, even more so than I think I've seen him almost any other time, certainly than he appeared to be during the campaign. But he's due in the hall here any minute, and we expect the declaration here before very long. It was thought that this result at Bexley could be close to Mr. Heath. It won't be long before we find out just how close it's going to be. He's been opposed here in his own constituency by another Mr. Heath, a man who changed his name just before the polls. That gave them a few worries before the last couple of weeks, but because they thought that there might be a leakage of votes to this other Mr. Heath. And they had to, fortunately, they drew for the leader of the Conservative Party, Edward Heath, the bottom place on the list here at Bexley. Although it had rather unfortunate overtones at times, I'm sure, when they had to advise their supporters to vote for the man at the bottom of the list. But when you see the poll being declared here in a few minutes, the last Mr. Heath to be mentioned is the leader of the Conservative Party, Edward Heath, who certainly has looked, as the evening has worn on, a very happy man here at Bexley. It's been a very hot day here. He's had a busy day in his own constituency. Lunch with a lot of the Conservative Party supporters at the King's Head, an old pub here which he goes to quite a lot in his own constituency, down in the old part of the town. And he's been touring around, as I'm sure most of the candidates have, all day around the various polling booths. Bexley has taken this pretty much in its stride, this election. It's been very quiet. You see very few posters about. Seems in a way to mirror the man who represents it, the leader of the Conservative Party. Anyway, we should be back here in a few seconds. You can see a bit more activity over there now. There's Ted Heath's agent over there behind me, and it shouldn't be long before we're back here. Meanwhile, back to the studio.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. And if Mr. Heath is, in fact, watching us at the moment, Mr. Heath, let me just tell you that our computer is saying now, after 126 results are in, that you will be back as Prime Minister with a likely Conservative majority over Labour at 43. David Butler is itching to say how many recounts we've got going on.
It's not only recounts. Stockport, which was on a recount, has come in. But what I would want to stress is that about 6-7 seats have come in which Labour have held, which they should have been losing on the swing. Watford, well, there's a recount there, but they're holding All Saints. Plymouth Sutton they're holding. Brentford and Chiswick they held. Kelvin Grove, the first Scottish result, they held. It was a seat that would need a big swing to lose, but they held it. Reading they've held. Eton and Slough they've held. And Putney they've held. And this is one of the reasons why the computer projection is going down, because Labour is hanging on to the marginals, rather the reverse of what we were told was going to happen, that the Conservatives were going to do extra well in the marginals.
You beat me to it. I was going to say, you were all the chaps.
I'm not a pollster.
No, all the chaps. Graham Pyatt wants a word before we go to Robert Mackenzie. Hang on just a moment, Robert. Yeah. Graham Pyatt, come along.
I just wanted to say that the swing in Labour marginals to the Conservatives has in fact been greater than the national average swing. No. It's been of the order of 5%, whereas we've got a national average swing running at the moment at about 4.3.
So the electors know their own minds, which is more than one can say for the pollsters. Robert Mackenzie.
Well, let's look at the state of the parties then at 13 minutes past 1, with now 153 results in. And you'll see that the position for Labour is that they are ahead, but the fact is these are seats of theirs that are being counted, and they are making very serious losses as well. There are 3 gains that Labour made, or 1 from the Liberals, and 2 regains of seats they'd lost at by-elections to the Conservatives. And they have a net loss of 14. Remember, if they have a net loss of 33, they are out of office. Now they have a net loss of 15 as we're watching it, halfway almost to what would knock them out of office. When you look at the lead board, there is still that 38 Labour lead, but still 476 results to come. The computer is settling in a prediction around 43. My own guess is that may come down a bit. Because, as David has pointed out, there's seats that ought to have gone to the Conservatives that haven't gone to the Conservatives on that figure. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it came down from a 43 Labour majority.
Good. Now, we really are keeping our eye on a great many things for you at the moment, but clearly what we've... Conservatives have gained Nottingham South. That's another gain for them. We're waiting for Mr Thorpe to turn up and talk to Robin Day, but the Conservatives have gained Nottingham South. That's one they really expected to gain.
It was only 300 majority last time.
It was so narrow last time that it wasn't true. Let's now confirm some of the gains that we were talking about. Charles Curran back in for Uxbridge. He was there before, you may remember. Here he is, back in again, and he ousts a publishing executive from there, and
4.7 swing. Back in the house at 67.
Now, let's go to Mr Heath. Mr Heath is at Bexley, I can see.
Bloody thing, really, is it? And Ted Heath, you can see here at Bexley, wearing, if he turns round to face us in a minute, the smile that won't come off. And in a moment, about to find out his own fate here in his own constituency. He's been watching on the television screen the national performance of his party tonight, which is cause, of course, for a tremendous amount of comfort and encouragement to him. And in a moment, the result here from Bexley. There was a little hiatus here a few minutes ago when we heard that a parcel of 50 ballot papers had been lost, and they've apparently been retrieved. And all the apparatus of the local authority, you see, up on the platform here. And here is the result of the Bexley Heath electorate, Bexley constituency, leader of the Conservative Party, Edward Heath.
Ladies and gentlemen, the returning officer will now declare the result of the election.
Parliamentary election, Bexley constituency. I, Raymond Pope, being the returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Cartwright,
Labour. John
Cameron, 19,017. Coney, Michael Hall,
Independent Conservative.
833. Harrison,
Liberal.
Edward Peter Graham, 3,222.
Now, this is not Ted Heath, the next candidate.
Edward James Robert Lambert, 938.
And now Ted Heath.
Heath, Edward Richard George, 27,000. 27,075. And that the undermentioned person has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency, the Right Honourable Edward Richard George Heath.
And at Bexley, Ted Heath quadruples his majority.
The number of ballot papers rejected and not counted by me at this election totaled 173, signed on the 19th of June, 1970.
A quadrupled majority for Ted Heath.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, may I thank you, Mr. Mayor, on behalf of the candidates in this election, for your work as returning officer in presiding over this poll today, and to thank the town clerk and all those who have assisted, both of you, particularly in the polling booths, and to congratulate you on the very efficient organisation which all of the candidates have seen today. And may I also thank those in the police force who have also assisted in the process of the poll which has taken place. The electors of Bexley have done me the honour of electing me for these past 20 years to represent this constituency, And I would like to thank all of them here today for the confidence which they have again reposed in me, and to give them the pledge which I gave them at the beginning of this campaign, that I shall do my best, as I have done before, to serve all of them, quite regardless of what their political party may be. And if I may, I would like to take this opportunity of thanking all of those of my supporters who have played a very active part in this campaign at a time when I myself, as leader of the Conservative Party, have obviously spent a great deal of time in the rest of the country. And so I would like to thank them very sincerely for all that they have done.
Mr. Returning Officer, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour for me to second this vote.
David?
Well, Mr. Heath is back as member for Bexley, and it's pleased him on a 5.7% swing, just a bit above the national average, and if it wasn't for the other Mr. Heath, he'd have had an even bigger swing. But I'm sure he's much more pleased about winning the election nationally even than he is about anything that may have happened down in Bexley. The oddest thing in the Bexley result, though, is that only 76% of people voted, and there was a 9% drop in turnout, much the biggest fall in turnout in any constituency that I've noticed the figures of so far this evening.
You may have noticed they're flashing by. What we're really doing is telling you the story now and keeping you up to date with the flashes as they go by. But Eric Lubbock is out at Orpington. Miss Eric Lubbock is out at Orpington, and here are the figures. He's out by 1,322, and a very disconsolate Mr. Thorpe I can see down in Barnstaple. Very, very disconsolate indeed with that news, and that's the very first he heard of it. Mr. Thorpe, Robin Day will be talking to you in a moment, but we really must bring people up to date with a quick summary from Robert Mackenzie. Bob?
One point to keep in mind, that with 1/4 of the results in, Labour has lost half the seats they could afford to lose if they're still going to remain in power. That's the key thing. 1/4 of the results in, Labour's now lost half the seats they could afford to lose. State of the Party Board shows this. Upper right-hand corner, remember we said that the Labour could lose not more than 33 seats. They've already lost net 17. They're halfway to the number of losses that will knock them out of office. Their gains are simply 2 they've recaptured that they lost at by-elections, and 1 from the Liberals. The Tories piling up the necessary figures they need there in gains, building toward a probable majority. There we are in the lead board then. 37 Labour still ahead, but losing decisively in key seats. And the swing is settling in over 4, but only just over 4, 4.3 according to my calculation, which is what we said was the minimum necessary for a Conservative government. And I would guess myself that the computer may still be predicting a bit high in a 43, remember, Conservative lead over Labour. Liberals doing badly so far, of course, and that's an important factor.
Yeah, I believe that the Conservatives have also gained Birmingham Perry Barr, but here's the result from Billericay, which was a Conservative gain. There we are. This is a key Labour seat, gained from Conservatives last time. They really had to hold on to this. This is the largest constituency in England. But now...
3.1% swing.
Yeah, let's leave that, because we really must go to Robin Day, and because I can see Mr. Thorpe waiting. Robin?
Yes, now, Mr. Thorpe, your own result first. It must have been some awkward moments for you with that majority only of 371.
No, I don't think the awkwardness arose until the last moment. Obviously, it's close. This has always been a marginal seat. It had a 9,000 Tory majority when I moved in. It is very close. I think the Tories have mounted a formidable campaign over the last 5-6 years with a full-time candidate working 4 days a week. There is a swing to the Tories. I think this is the most formidable challenge that I shall ever have to face in this constituency, but the important thing is that I'm home.
Would you be gallant enough to admit that those 371 votes were probably all due to your wife, whom you've married since the last election?
Oh, I would say that she contributed far more to my total poll.
Mr. Thorpe, on the more serious matter of the Liberal Party's position in this election, you've lost Ladywood, Mr. Lawler, and you were even deeply distressed just now. I see you were deeply distressed to see the loss of Eric Lubbock at Orpington. What is your comment on the Liberal progress?
Well, I think the loss of Eric Lubbock is a tragedy, not only to the Liberal Party, but to the House of Commons as a whole, where he was a very valuable member, and indeed was an excellent constituency member for Orpington. This, I think, is a tragedy for British politics, and therefore I'm naturally, on every ground, extremely saddened by this particular result.
If there is a Conservative government, and the contrary hasn't yet been predicted, your forecasts and your strategy in the election has been totally wrong, hasn't it? Because you've been saying Labour's going to get in, therefore put in the Liberals as a more sensible kind of opposition.
Well, it's